Now, the learning outcome for digital forensic additional topics. We're talking about adversary thinking in digital forensic. You need to think that the enemy, how they hide, how they deceive, and then how to extract information without um, causing people to be alert. We have also talked about a new types of digital forensic and also some tools that is useful in digital forensic. Now, cloud forensic is a new type of forensic that we are increasingly seeing, okay, because of the growing use of cloud services. A lot of digital evidence are now stored in cloud environment, and cloud forensic will involve collecting, preserving, and analyzing data from this different cloud platform. So in a typical scenario, in the corporate data breach investigation, the attacker have happened to gain access to sensitive data that's been stored on a cloud server. The forensic analysts will need to navigate the complexity of the cloud storage, including understanding the access logs and preserving the evidence that has been stored offsite. Now, some key challenges that are associated with cloud forensics include things like remote access. You will need to have this additional steps of going into a remote site to gain access into the evidence. It's different from a normal forensic where you actually can get your hands on the evidence itself. Okay, you will need to have authorization to access the cloud because the hardware is actually not owned by the company, but it's actually owned by the cloud provider. Okay, and then you also need to be very sure of the ownership of the data, because sometimes the attacker could have moved this data to another cloud storage platform, and then you would then have to prove that you have, the company will need to prove that they are the owner of this data in order to gain access. So there are a lot of legal consideration that you need to get into. IoT forensic. IoT is increasingly being used in a lot of application, and many a times we find that because of the way that the IoT devices has been used in our life, some of the evidence are actually stored in the IoT devices. Okay, so for example, in a criminal case, smart home devices such as a voice activated assistant like some Apple speakers or the Amazon speakers, okay, they could have actually stored recorded video, audio evidence that's related to a crime. So the forensic expert will need to retrieve and analyze the data from the devices while maintaining the chain of custody. Right. So these are something new. A lot of us are not familiar with the working of those IoT devices. So there's something that we need to learn, right? So as a forensic expert, we will need to learn some new stuff along the way as these new devices comes along, right? Because there are different access mechanism. There could be different types of storage devices, okay, a different way to access it, and so on. So again, that provides a new challenge for forensic itself. Mobile device forensic. It is similar to IoT devices, but a lot more complicated, right? Mobile devices are increasingly used for forensic evidence in court, because criminals will use it to send messages, do voice calls, and so on. So forensic evidence such as the geolocation, the access log, the message log, photos that's been taken on the phone itself, emails, application that's been running on the phone. All these are part of forensic evidence that need to be extracted off the mobile devices. So they are, as a forensic expert that deals with mobile devices, you will need to have a different set of tools that allows you to access into the mobile devices. You will need to go through different sets of authentication, how to bypass the locks, how to use the facial recognition, fingerprint recognition, how to bypass those. So there are some legal boundaries that are actually quite that you need to be very, very clear of, whether you are able to bypass those boundaries. And then of course some peculiar make of the mobile devices are a lot harder to get into, right? Android is a lot easier than iPhone, for example. You need to be very, very careful on making sure that you are protecting yourself as a forensic expert, not to cross into the gray area of cracking the authentication method, right? So be very, very careful when you are dealing with mobile device forensic. Malware analysis is an exciting and crucial part of digital forensic, where you will need to learn how to identify, analyze, and understand the behavior of malicious software. You will need to know how it impacts the systems and how it can be detected and mitigated, right? Now, there are two ways that you can deal with malware analysis. One is called static analysis, and the other one is dynamic analysis. The static analysis is you are looking at a code and you run it off your mind, right? You're just running it line by line, and you analyze how the code is being run without actually running it, right? So it is important that you develop these skills for doing static analysis, because a lot of time we want to know the behavior of the malware before it is actually run. Because running a malware is a serious business. You don't want to, of course, you want to run it in a controlled environment, but you also want to know whether this malware will detect that it is being run in a controlled environment, and that those are the things that you can only do it in a controlled environment, in a static environment. Meaning you will have to go through the code and make sure that this malware don't destroy itself, it doesn't do funny stuff when it's being run in a controlled environment, and so on, right? So static analysis is important. It has to be done before you do the dynamic analysis, right? So dynamic analysis is when you actually run the code, right? Because some of the things only shows up when you run it, right? It's not, maybe not so clear when you're doing static analysis, because it is too complicated, and so on. But nonetheless, you have to do the static first before you do the dynamic, right? Now, there are also legal and ethical consideration. Make sure that you run it. Make sure you only run the malware in a controlled environment. Never run it in an uncontrolled environment. don't never run a malware knowingly in a environment where it can propagate, okay, where it touches the internet, where it touches the corporate environment, right? And you need to adhere to the laws in cybersecurity practices, right? Don't spread, okay? If you need to pass the malware to another person for analysis, make sure that it's packaged in a form that is safe to transport. Make sure that it's well documented, right? When you pass this, when you handle this malware, right? Now there are also many types of malware. Things like viruses, worm, Trojan, ransomware, spyware, adware. These are terms that we associate with malware to categorize some of the behavior. Like for example, if a malware is termed as a virus, it means that this malware has to latch on to some other programs, just like biological viruses. If a malware is termed as worm, then it will propagate organically through networks and through whichever means that you can have. And a malware that is termed as a Trojan, it means that it is masquerading as some useful programs. In fact, a lot of times malwares hide itself underneath a skin of application that people are looking for, like for example software that provides crack codes, or software that provides cracks to games, or cracks to legal applications. And because a lot of times we run this, those people who want to get free software, or don't want to pay license and so on, they download this cracker from don't know where, and they will just run it. And most of the time they encounter a message that says please provide administrative privilege because that's what I need, and they will just be granting it, and in fact give the permission to the virus or to the malware to do whatever they want, right? So this is a very important that please use legal software, and try not to download software from unknown source, and even if it's downloaded from known source, use a virus scanner to run through it. Anything that's downloaded from the internet, please treat it with a 10-foot pole, and do your due diligence. In digital forensic, it is important that we build this habit of creating timeline and do proper reporting for digital forensic, because it is important for us to craft this timeline of a digital environment so that we understand from the point of entry when this malware or when the adversary has entered into the system, until and also the mod operators of the adversary, how he has moved from one place to another, okay, how he gained foothold into the environment, okay, and finally, if it comes to it, how it deploy the ultimate kill process, right? So it is a variable skill that forensic expert need to build up, okay, how to build this timeline, Okay. So you need to first create extract out all the evidence, put it in a chronological order, okay, and then fill in the gaps within the timeline, right? Because when one evidence lead to another evidence, you will see there's a gap, right? If there is, right? How he has moved from one machine to another machine, what kind of vulnerability he has been using, and so on. So all these are you can actually find it in logs, in the different evidence trail in your either in network logs or in system logs and different big crumbs that the adversary has left behind, the different digital evidence that has been leave behind. Okay, you need to link them up, link all this evidence together into a timeline in a chronological order, so you can have a view of how the whole path the adversary has taken. Right? And if there's gaps, it allows you to, it points you to where you should be looking for. Right? And from this timeline, you then develop your forensic report. Right? It's a evidence-based comprehensive documents that detail the finding and the analysis of all the evidence that you have gathered and all the investigation you have done, the timeline that you have constructed, right? The kind of jump or the kind of vulnerabilities that has been exploited and so on. And it is in this report can be used to further study. It can be submitted to court of law. It can be submitted to the virus repository, okay, to help us understand better the adversaries. The data privacy regulation, it is also something that a forensic expert will need to be aware of, right? There's some, because of the privacy regulations, different states, different countries have, like for example, the GDPR, which is in Europe, okay, it's a regulation from EU that governs the how the personal data is being protected, how the personal data of an individual, what can be used, what cannot be used, and all this stuff. Okay, and CCPA is a law that is from California. Okay, again, it is also protecting the citizens' private data. Okay. Singapore also have a law, the PDPA. Okay. Again, it regulates how the private organization collect, use, disclose personal data. A lot of time, digital forensic data are private data, right? And that's what the adversarial are interested in, private data, right? So be very careful when you're dealing with this evidence, because you don't want to get yourself into trouble by, inevitably leaking the data. And then you need to have this, of course, for professional conduct. When you in the course of an investigation, you may be looking at a personal data of someone. Please keep it confidential. Don't chit-chat it with your friend and so on. You'll be violating the regulation, right? So be very, very careful. Be very, very professional when you are dealing with data, and be aware of the pitfall. Okay. for data privacy. Adversaries are also very well versed in what we call anti-forensic techniques. Anti-forensic techniques are methods that is used to cover up the digital evidence, to make collecting digital evidence harder. Right? So as when we do digital forensic, we need to be aware of some of these techniques that the adversary are using. For example, data hiding via encryption and authentication. We will need to know how to decode it. We will need to know how to de-authenticate the codes, de-authenticate the data. We need to look for evidence that the data has been deleted, has been wiped. Is there a way that we can recover those data? We need to be aware of what we call time stomping. Now, a lot of times in our audits or in file creation and so on, there are timestamps. Okay, and adversarial can actually meddle with the timestamp, or what we call time stomping. They will just overwrite the timestamp with irrelevant data or dates that is misleading, and so on. Okay? So be very careful when you look at the data, and treat each evidence, individually, and also be with a logical mind to see if is this timestamp logical, right? Does it fit, right? It is very easy to timestamp, but it's very difficult to timestamp in a consistent and logical manner, right? An adversary, if you want to lie, for example, you need to lie from the onset, and you need to have a consistent story, and it's very, very difficult to keep a consistent story if you are lying, right? If it's the truth, it's quite easy, right? You just tell the truth. Right? But if you are trying to lie, like adversary trying to cover up their trail, they are lying. Right? It is not easy to have a consistent story when you're lying, and this is where forensic experts need to look for inconsistency in the data, to spot things like data hiding, spot things like timestamping, log manipulation, and all this stuff. Okay? So keep a logical mind when you look at the digital evidence. Okay. Digital evidence needs to be consistent, and any inconsistency will point to anti-forensic technique. Okay. Now here we come to the end of the presentation on the IJCO Digital Forensic additional topic. Thank you for your attention.